Previously on X-Men.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the world's most extreme, most mutated podcast. That's right. It's Uncanny Treks covers the season finale of X-Men 97 Season 1. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Matt, how are you doing this evening?
I loved this finale, Bob, but I'm disappointed that there's not more, just like all the other fans on Facebook. I think they need to do what we used to do, Bob. We should go back, rewatch them until the next season comes out. Just start back with episode 1, watch one a week, keep going, just keep going until the next season comes out. Yeah. I could totally do that.
Keep downloading Uncanny Treks. Or join us on Patreon and relive X-Men 92 by comparing it to Young Justice like we do.
And that's the thing, Bob, too, with a lot of the stuff going on online, people talking, go back and read the comics. Go back and watch the original run if you have not already done so. Get that knowledge. It's good stuff. It's great stuff.
Well, some of it.
But yeah, you can figure out Google what the good stuff is and watch it. Or read it. Just do it.
Yeah.
That way you have some knowledge of what's happening, because sometimes people ask these stupidest questions online, and I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to react. I don't know if it's meant to be funny. My shitposting group, was taken over by crazy people, and I don't even know if it's shitposting anymore or if it's just awful bigotry. I don't know which one it is. It's insane, Bob.
Yeah. A lot of bigotry, and it's sometimes kind of hard to sort out, like, who's genuinely confused, which is fine, versus, like, who's just doing it for a laugh, which also can be funny. But then you also have these, like, weird combinations of, like, people who are being bigots, but also have clearly never read an X-Men comic in their lives.
Yes, much like a lot of people that watch Star Trek.
Which, like, it's one of those bigotry in Star Wars, bigotry in the Avengers fan base makes sense. Even bigotry in the Batman fan base would make sense. I'm not saying you should be a Star Wars fan or a Batman fan and be a bigot, but are you going to be a Star Trek fan or an X-Men fan or a Superman fan and be a bigot? That just makes no sense. Like, you can't do that.
You obviously don't understand the story. And don't tell me it's up to your interpretation, because it's not. It's clear as day. It's an extended metaphor, but it's right in your face.
As I always tell my students is there not one right interpretation? No, there's many right interpretations. There's just many more wrong ones.
There you go, Bob. That's the perfect way to say it. Some very wrong ones, honest to God.
Yeah, terrible. Well, Matt, I guess to go from interpretation to foreshadowing, did you pick up on anything in the opening credits?
There's one thing about the credits. You've got a setup with a young Xavier and a young Magneto, and what I like about these credit scenes is they kind of give us remastered scenes, like with the newer animation style. And I like that because it points, in the right direction of, like, where this plot's going. We've seen Apocalypse so many times in the opening credits, and we don't see Apocalypse till, spoiler, end of this episode.
Yeah. And usually, I feel like usually it was Cable fighting Apocalypse in the opening credits, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was Cable. But then we also see a lot of X-Factor, some of those characters that are mentioned and hinted at, which I'll talk about a little later.
We see younger Xavier and Magneto, and then we go into Xavier and Magneto's flashbacks, and then Xavier and Magneto's mind war. Definitely the most homoerotic thing the show has done, Xavier and Magneto's mind war, right?
Oh, yeah, totally, for sure. I mean, do you think Disney would let them have a relationship?
Probably not, but to jump way, way ahead, they do it's a little bit veiled, but they do let Morph confess his love for Wolverine.
I love that part. That was so awesome. Not only because it stirred a whole lot of bigots, but at the same time, I never really thought about that. This is how the non-binary thing can work. It makes sense. There's nothing wrong with it.
It's sad because it's like a little bit of it. Morph is not comfortable saying how they feel as themselves, and they have to do it as Jean. And it's also maybe a little bit of a trial balloon too. It was just a really psychologically interesting scene, right?
And it goes all the way back to the very first episode, Bob, where you could tell that Wolverine and Morph had a relationship, that Wolverine cared about Morph. the minute he gets back to the X-Mansion, he punches Cyclops in the gut for leaving Morph behind.
It's very similar to Wolverine and Nightcrawler's relationship in the comics, which hasn't always been sexualized, but definitely has had some very strong subtext or overtones at different points.
Let's be honest, Bob. If you're Wolverine and you're like 150-something years old, I mean, you can't tell me he hadn't thought about it.
My man's definitely played around on the spectrum. He's been alive since the Victorian
So
period.
seriously, you're going to get bored after a while, guys.
They can't all be redheads.
Yeah. Well, apparently they can, because there are so many redheads in the Marvel Universe. I don't know if that's some kind of genetic mutation or what's going on there.
It's the real basis of the Xavier-Wolverine alliance. It's not ideology. It's just a shared fetish for redheads.
Plenty of redheads. Lots and lots of redheads.
Oh, well. So to go back to the Xavier-Magneto mind war, I did like Magneto monologues, as he's wont to do. And we do have a great line about describing the humans. They even compete over being the best victim. I thought that was a very good line.
I mean, that's so true. That's all social media is at times. I mean, who has it worse off? Who has the worst ailment? This actually is a thing that goes on now. I'm sure it existed before social media, but it's just more prevalent.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
very timely Magneto line, as so many of his lines have been throughout this season.
So, Bob, we have a lot of cameos going on in this episode, a ton, and I was just super hyped to see all of them. I mean, there wasn't a single cameo I didn't see. I was, oh yeah, there he is. Yes, I know that guy. I know that guy. I know that guy. And it was awesome. I don't think there was anyone that showed up that I don't know who that person's supposed to be. So,
do you wanna run through maybe the first set to the Winter Guard, and we could talk about them a little?
Sure. So let's talk about a little bit some of these characters. We see Silver Samurai again. He was in the previous episode, I believe, when the power went out. We see Iron Man and Captain America, and this Iron Man is the buff Ab Iron Man from the animated series in the 90s, which I was glad to see. It shows there's some continuity there. They're complaining, I think, because originally I think this was supposed to be set. The only characters that actually crossed over, I believe, were supposed to be X-Men and Spider-Man back in the day, and that the other series were set in a different alternate reality.
But that doesn't work, though, because Spider-Man crosses over with both Iron Man and Fantastic Four.
Exactly. So I don't know what they're about, but they keep on about it, and I'm just like, I need to just get off the internet again. That's the issue. But but Captain America, we see him. We don't see them fight or anything, but they're hanging out in the president's office or whatever, the war room.
People have accused this show of character assassinating Captain America, which, I mean, it has, but also it's X-Men, and Captain America is going to get a character assassinated a little bit in X-Men. That's just the way of things. But I did like that they at least tried to show Cap trying to restrain President Kelly. I mean, he was failing at it, and so that made him look even worse in a way.
Right.
But it at least showed him as well-intentioned towards the mutants, if not actually effective.
People bitching about the EMP not taking out Iron Man.
You have a good explanation for that, don't you, man?
His suit's probably not even powered. Okay, that was the Robert Downey Jr. stuff. Okay, this is probably just a big ass metal suit he's wearing. It probably runs on gasoline. I don't know. Hey, come on, I can get around that. You're all thinking of like the newer looking Iron Man, not the Iron Man of the '90s.
Then who else do we see?
Oh no, of course we see Daredevil, Bob, and this
which is great, man.
Made me want a Daredevil cartoon. They're going live action. Give me a cartoon version of Daredevil. I will watch that series. I would love that series.
I don't know if I'm ever gonna, because I only did the first 2 seasons of Netflix Daredevil. I don't know if I'm ever gonna go back to that or if I'm gonna watch Born Again, but I would watch the hell out of a Daredevil animated series.
I mean, even just the moves and stuff he was doing, that is just cool animation, and how he fights them, how he takes out the rioters with his batons. But then we see Doctor Strange, who we've seen a couple of times.
Could I complain about this one a little? On the one hand, it is cool because it shows that the EMP took out all the power. So you have Doctor Strange magically operating by candlelight, and that's cool. But I will say, I just don't love Doctor Strange when he's doing doctor stuff. The Doctor Strange comics usually just have him be a sorcerer, right? His hands are too messed up to do surgery anymore, which they're sort of getting around with the magic thing here. And I prefer Doctor Strange as a magician, not Doctor Strange as like superhero doctor, if that distinction makes sense.
Bob, how you gonna make money? You gonna make more money off doing magic or doing surgery?
TikTok would totally show us that you make more money doing magic, Matt, or pretending to.
This is 1997, Bob. They didn't have no TikTok.
Oh, you're right. I'm owned.
He's going to be at the public library, Bob, doing magic. I don't even think they pay.
Well, then the other one I wanted to discourse on a little bit, I guess we could go ahead and say this. So we see Black Panther and the Dora Milaje. And then later, Matt, what is revealed about Black Panther?
Yeah, we learn that this is actually T'Chaka, which I believe is his father, correct?
Yeah, who dies in his origin or in Captain America Civil War, I think it was. Which, on the one hand, I think it's an interesting choice. I'm not that bothered by it. But on the other hand, it does a little bit mess up. We're talking about the shared universe. So in the Fantastic Four cartoon, there is a Black Panther episode, or maybe it's a two-parter, and Black Panther is definitely T'Challa. So this is another thing that puts it in a little bit of tension with some of the other Marvel Animated Universe stuff.
So the question, Bob, the Black Panther we saw in the original X-Men run, definitely T'Chaka then?
Well, I would have said before definitely T'Challa, because he's definitely T'Challa in the Fantastic Four cartoon at around the same time. But yeah, now we would definitely have to say that that's revised, right?
Yeah. Maybe there's T'Chaka and T'Challa, and we just don't know. I
can't remember how much of the origin the Fantastic Four episode gets into, so maybe that would work, but I tend to think it wouldn't. I tend to think they mention that Claus killed T'Chaka, I think.
Sounds to me I need to go and watch this Fantastic Four episode and report back.
Okay, just the episode.
Oh yeah, just the episode. Yeah. Yes. And Bob, when we do our season coverage, I did go back and rewatch Motendo, just to let you know that I did punish myself. So I just want you to know this. But I punished myself for a good reason.
Way to punish yourself.
So fans, if you want to know some insight on Motendo and how Bob and I are going to have very different opinions of that episode, check out our season recap.
Indeed. And then we have Cloak and Dagger, right, who I was so excited to see in the cameo rundown. Love Cloak and Dagger. Strong 90s nostalgia.
Man, they're just around everywhere all the time now. So those characters, you would think those characters, all I remember them from is Maximum Carnage. But man, they have come a long way.
Have they? Didn't they have a show recently?
Yeah, it wasn't one of the popular ones, and it's one that kind of slid under the rug because it wasn't that great. But still, come on, they got their own show.
It maybe just got a season or two.
Yeah, and I was introduced to them in Maximum Carnage, and that was about it. I mean, I didn't really. But then I've also seen them in X-Men comics, the stuff I'm reading now. Yeah, there they are, still doing their thing.
In my mind, they actually don't show up that often. They had their big ongoing series in like late 80s, early 90s. And there have been mini-series here and there, but I feel not that many and not that often since. So I feel like they've really fallen off, and they're just being brought back for the 90s nostalgia, which I'm really happy with because I like them. And given the fact that they're mutants, I've always wished they would just be folded into the X-Men a little more, since they don't seem to really make it on their own very much in terms of comics.
Oh yeah, definitely putting them in the X-Men's way better, I would think, because they can't. I don't think they couldn't hold a show themselves. We know that. We saw that happen.
Yeah. So well, and I can see if they could hold a series, I could see what you would want them to do it separate, because they work best as being on the run and isolated from the larger society. But if they can't hold a series, I would rather see them in X-Men than not see them at all.
They're good for cameos, I think, more than anything. They show up occasionally.
I liked them on the Dark X-Men and Fractions run.
All right, well, let's talk about the next group, which I didn't know the name of one of them, but I remember the character. So we had the Winter Guard.
Yeah, and who are our three members of the Winter Guard, man?
We've got Omega Red, Dark Star, and Crimson Dynamo. I could not remember Dark Star for the life of me, but I recognize the costume, but I cannot think of what her name was.
She was definitely in X-Men 92, but I also shared your problem of is immediately recognize her, but it's, oh God, what's that name? And I had to Google it as well.
Yeah.
I also had to Google Crimson Dynamo, who traditionally is more just an Iron Man villain. I knew, okay, that's the Russian Iron Man villain in a suit, but what's his name?
Yeah, the only reason I remember him was I think he was part of Fractions Run at one point when I read it. I think he goes and meets up with Crimson Dynamo.
I believe that's correct.
For some armor or something.
Lately, the Marvel has been pushing the Winter Guard a little more. The next up was a confusing cameo.
Exactly.
Because we see Alpha Flight, or at least we see three members of Alpha Flight, right? We see North Star, Aurora, and Puck. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, we see those three.
And then we see Psylocke
standing in front of them.
standing in front of them, who has been on an X-Force team with Puck before, but is not traditionally associated with Alpha Flight. And then I feel bad that a black woman is the only one of these characters that I'm not super sure about, but I think that black woman is supposed to be Frenzy, who's Joanna Cargill from the Acolytes, who we saw in our coverage of X-Men 92 when they go to, Asteroid M.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had no clue
Yeah.
she was either. Not a clue.
But I think it's supposed to be her because I've skimmed all the Alpha Flight comics, and I don't remember there ever being a prominent black woman, and I did some looking to try to make sure I wasn't forgetting anybody, and I don't think I was. So I think it's I think it's most likely to be Joanna Cargill as Frenzy, who's a very cool character, and I would be happy to see later seasons of X-Men develop her more. But yeah, just no association with Alpha Flight. So interesting, Psylocke and Frenzy plus 3 random members of Alpha Flight.
Yeah, I had no clue why Psylocke was bunched in with them. It threw me completely off. I was like, oh, they're not on the same team. If anything, I would have assumed Psylocke would have been in England. Because remember when the only appearance Psylocke made in the original run was when they zoomed over Excalibur at some point. You saw Captain Britain and Betsy Braddock.
Oh no, that's not true. She has a more extensive appearance later. Although I think it was an episode after we stopped watching as kids.
Oh, okay. I don't think we haven't covered that yet in our
We haven't covered
92
it yet.
coverage. Yeah. So we'll get back to that soon. But
we'll get back to it. I will say you're right though that episode just nothing about it prepares you to see Psylocke with Alpha. It seemed incongruous. Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah.
All right, Bob, next we see Magneto's 3 children in his mind. They're on a boat with Rogue.
the 4 people who care. And for those who don't know who are Magneto's 3 children, Matt?
We have Wanda. We have Pietro.
Dr. Lorna Dane, a.k.a. Polaris, who we saw in a future cameo a couple of episodes ago.
We've seen multiple times throughout this entire series.
She who has no time for Bobby Drake, nor should she have.
But now, Bob, we get Morph, and they're morphing. Jeez, I love it. Who is he this time, Bob?
We get them as Sauron and as Mr. Fantastic.
Throw in Mr. Fantastic in there. That was awesome. The Sauron thing, they didn't even need to turn into Sauron, Bob.
They were just hopping down from the Blackbird.
They were showing off, and that's what makes Morph awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. I love Sauron very much. I hope we do get a Sauron appearance, a more substantial Sauron appearance in X-Men 97 at some point. One of my favorite X-Men villains. And then Matt, the big cameo, the last set of 3 characters. Who do we see?
Peter Parker, Mary Jane, and Flash Thompson. Oh man. I thought Mary Jane was lost in time or whatever based on this the season finale of Spider-Man 94.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, at the end of Spider-Man 94, Spider-Man still hasn't found Mary Jane, this is very promising for Spider-Man 98, because if they do Spider-Man 98, they can just start with Mary Jane there. They don't have to resolve that kind of weak plot.
Yeah, maybe they can just not include the whole Madam Web thing too.
Yeah, they should just skip Madam Web. They should just skip Counter-Earth. All toxic. Avoid it. So one thing I did want to point out that was kind of interesting, Matt, and Marvel does this sometimes. I mean, DC does it too, but in this, it was especially pronounced in Jason Aaron's recent Avengers run. There's a tendency to have competing blocks of international superheroes. In Jason Aaron's Avengers run, you have the Squadron Supreme representing the U.S. You have the Avengers representing Wakanda. You have the Winter Guard representing Russia. You have the Defenders representing Atlantis, and so on. And so here you've got a very international sort of crew of Silver Samurai for Japan, Winter Guard for Russia, Alpha Flight for Canada, and the Cap and Iron Man for America. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Oh, that's actually cool.
Well, it's also interesting, too, because it's continuing this tradition of, this is just a guess, it might be totally wrong, but based on this cameo and prior cameos, they're playing Silver Samurai more as a hero, it sort of seems.
It really does.
Yeah, and the same, it's interesting to see Omega Red more in a hero or an anti-hero mode, supported by Darkstar and Crimson Dynamo. That's very interesting.
I just cannot see Omega Red as a hero, period. Especially after reading the stuff in X-Force.
I can.
Yeah, you're a communist.
Yeah.
You root for Omega Red.
I do. Omega Red and I share an ideology. My real hope for a spinoff is the Winter Guard, communist superhero adventures.
What I can appreciate, though, Bob, is that they do show the common man during this time going and rioting like crazy and stealing things, and you have your more localized heroes like Spider-Man and Daredevil taking them out.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what would happen. We got 12 hours left. I'll go steal a TV.
Matt's like, well, the world's ending, but I can have a better TV for the last 5 hours.
Even though it won't work since there's no power.
In a similar spirit, Matt, I really like that Bastion calls Cyclops a deadbeat dad. That really made me laugh.
Bob, he totally is a deadbeat dad. I mean, Bishop raises kid. I mean, come on. We'll punt him all the way into the future, and hopefully he'll turn out okay.
Very funny, very funny. Another great moment as we keep moving was when Phoenix comes out and Storm sees Phoenix, and her response is just to laugh with joy. I thought that was great.
Well, this is the thing, too, Bob. If Phoenix comes out of Jean there, then we know that during the Phoenix saga, that was not Madeline Pryor.
Oh, interesting point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you're probably right. Although you could maybe come up with some sort of convoluted explanation about Jean's genetics being primed for the Phoenix or something.
Bob, X-Men being convoluted, what are you talking about? Never.
Well, Matt, I'm gonna insert a spoiler here and say I just read the final issue of X-Men Forever this week.
Yeah.
Where spoilers for anybody who has not read X-Men Forever, but X-Men Forever 4, Hope Summers. You know who Hope Summers' dad is?
Don't. Now I'm in the
not her adopted dad.
Not Cable. I know.
Not Cable, but her literal dad. You know who her literal dad is?
I don't know, Bob. Is this spoiled in this X-Men Forever comic?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Tell me. Just tell me. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and tell me.
It's Jean Grey.
What?
Yep. Jean Grey goes back into the past because it's sort of Mr. Sinister, sort of not, but a form of Mr. Sinister is trying to prevent. He's gone back to convince Hope's mother to not have Hope right before she gets pregnant. And then Jean Grey goes back to stop him, convinces Hope's mother to have Hope, and then telepathically impregnates Hope's mother with the Phoenix Force. So Jean is Hope's father, and it's basically a Trinity thing where Jean is God, the Phoenix is the Holy Spirit, and Hope is Jesus Christ. It's amazing.
That is cool. I have to admit, that's not bad, Bob. That's not bad. Now, you have totally ruined the whole Messiah thing for me, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I'm
okay with that.
You're going to have to read 20 years of comics to get there.
By the year 2055, I would know who Hope Summers' father is.
It's basically a lesbian immaculate conception.
That is really, really cool. Huh. I'm glad you spoiled that for me.
Man.
Because now I can go, now as I'm reading through, I'm already going to know that. And some of the stuff is the first time I'm reading through it. So I'm like, okay, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, because I think it will, as you keep reading, like, the Fraction and associated things run, I think it will make the Hope stuff have an interestingly different resonance. Because, that just came up last week, was not a thing before.
I don't like Star Wars that much anymore, Bob. I like Star Wars younger, but not I'm just tired of it. But it reminds me of Rey, the character of Rey and the new things. Like, when you don't know her past, and you're okay with it. But then they try to shoehorn in. But it's not like that here. This is actually cool.
But it's what if they revealed it and it was actually cool? What if they revealed Rey's backstory and it worked?
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, was this Hickman?
No, this is Kieran Gillen.
Gillen. Okay.
Who you're going to read after you read the Fraction stuff. Gillen does do a short Uncanny X-Men run, and he's also the one responsible for giving us the current characterization of Mr. Sinister.
Okay, that man needs my money, so I may have to go.
Oh yeah. Gillen's a boss, man. I love Gillen's stuff so much. On a somewhat related note, in the X-Men 97, I did really enjoy Sinister saying to Phoenix, "You think your peacocking makes you whole again?" Which is just funny to describe the Phoenix Force as a peacock.
Yeah, that's one fiery peacock, Bob. Jeez, that's not a peacock I want to mess with.
Did you enjoy this Sinister morph exchange after Phoenix just totally messes up Sinister?
Morph was just full of great things this episode. I'm telling you, the whole looking at Morph and seeing the sinister old man face, especially after watching that episode in season 5 of '92. Man, you just you know what happens to him. It's hilarious.
Yeah, Sinister comes up to Morph and tells them to show me my face, and Morph does and shows Sinister how messed up he looks, and then Morph's like, looks the same to me. And it's also cool because it plays back to Morph as Sinister's pawn from season 2.
Oh, I didn't even put that together. Oh, you're right. And they mentioned that, they mentioned that earlier in the season when they were talking about Sinister. And
in episode 2 or 3.
What he could do, what he did to Morph. I didn't put that together. So this is Morph getting their comeuppance in a sense. Wow.
Well, and it's also interesting because it's Morph, on one hand, Morph obeys Sinister unconditionally there, which is interesting. But on the other hand, like you say, they really get one over on Sinister, so it's a really interesting dynamic. Another interesting dynamic, I at least found personally satisfying, was Bastion beating the crap out of Cable with his metal arm. And by I mean Cable's metal arm that Bastion tore off and then beat Cable with.
Disney is willing to rip Cable's robot arm off, which I was excited about because I knew they could only go so far with the Wolverine thing, pulling his adamantium stuff out, but ripping a man's arm off. Now, I'm still holding out, Bob, that they're eventually going to show X-23 getting her actual arm sliced off like in the X-Force stuff. If you read that, do you remember that stuff?
Yeah.
That's brutal.
I have read that, but I have to confess the Laura losing an arm, I didn't remember. I have to
She's
confess.
6 damn issues without an arm, Bob, and she's beating people with the claws and everything. It's awesome. I want an action figure you can pull her arm off and just carry it around. Come on.
And Matt wants Laura to become arm fall off boy from the Legion.
Exactly. It's just amazing how they make that work.
Kind of funny just because it's not as big a deal for Laura as it would be for Wolverine because she's only losing 2 claws and she's got the claw each in each foot. So
right.
she still has almost as many claws as Wolverine.
And the writers are usually pretty smart too, Bob, about it, and that they don't overuse the foot claw and you forget about it. And then she'll magically just kick somebody. They'll be like, oh, you missed. No, I didn't. And there's a claw going through their groin or something.
The foot claw is a stupid idea that can be used in a very awesome way, would be how I would describe it.
All right, Bob, what else was awesome to me, though, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about this, with Bastion bonding with the Cable arm.
He became Archangel, Matt?
No, he didn't become Archangel, Bob, but this is the form that he takes in the pages of Second Genesis. All right, in that run. Exact same look, with the wings and the almost the Tony Stark triangle thing on his chest that's shining. But it has nothing to do with Cable's arm in that series. But people online are speculating, though, that the time travel stuff that takes place at the end of the episode with Asteroid M, that's because the arm had the time travel technology within it. Because that's what
that's funny. I like the idea of Cable's severed arm becoming the time travel MacGuffin.
Well, it had that cube in it. Remember, they keep showing that stupid cube that pops out.
That's right.
So maybe that's just his way of using that, and it also explains why they were sent along the same timeline that Cable's timeline of him being a young teenager and then further into the future with Mother Ascani. But speaking of which, did you know that she was voiced by Gates McFadden?
Somebody did point that out in the X-Men shit posting group. So they're good for some things besides bigotry.
Yeah, and she actually got a good voiceover that wasn't on Prodigy.
Oh yeah, poor Gates McFadden. I've forgotten that they disrespected her like that. It's terrible.
Well, they just disrespected her, Bob. They disrespected all the other wonderful characters whose actors had passed away.
I feel like it's disrespectful to Gates McFadden to be, hey, you want to appear in a scene with a bunch of dead actors whose old lines are amateurishly cut together.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a little disrespectful to her too. We do have a very nice moment between Cyclops and skeletonless Wolverine, where Cyclops tells Wolverine, "Don't you dare die! Don't you dare break her heart," which was very nice.
Cyclops knows he loves Jean. He really loves Jean.
So, Matt, the next thing is a little bit of a tangent too. There's like a new Storm solo series coming.
Yeah, I saw that coming out.
Yeah, and so I didn't like the Storm miniseries when I read it a few years ago, the first Storm miniseries from the 90s, but I was like, oh, I'll reread that, and then I'll finally read that. She had an ongoing series in the late 2010s, and I'll read that too to just get up to speed. I've never read that before. And I haven't gotten the ongoing series hasn't come from the library yet, but the miniseries did. And so I read the miniseries, and it's still bad. It's not a good miniseries, unfortunately. But it did remind me of something I had tried to block out, which was, do you remember in the late 90s where they tried to have a Storm and Cable romance?
Yes, I do. But I feel like they had to try to have Storm romancing everyone in the 90s. They tried to push Wolverine on her. Like, it just nothing ever clicked.
No, as we saw in our coverage of the Age of Apocalypse episodes of X-Men 92, there's long been a tendency to do a Storm Wolverine thing, which actually got realized in the 2010s.
Yeah. So Bob, is this Storm series that's coming out, is she still Queen of the Mars or whatever?
No, it sounds like they're totally giving up on that. I don't really know how they're going to unwind Arakko. But it seems they're going to. It seems just the new editor just has no interest in anything from Krakoa at all.
Damn.
Which is annoying. Did you hear the other news about Storm?
No.
She is going to join the Avengers.
Okay. Well, that could be good.
And the guy writing the Avengers is Jed McKay, who he's going to write one of the main X-Men titles, and he's doing a very good run on Moon Knight right now. And his Avengers run, I wouldn't say it's been exceptional or really special, but it's not. It's been fun. It's especially as somebody like me who doesn't really love the Avengers. I think McKay has done a fine job on the Avengers thus far. So I'll be interested to see what he does with Storm in the Avengers.
Storm's never been on the Avengers before, though, correct?
I'm pretty sure she hasn't. Okay. That's why I think they're treating it as a big deal.
But Wolverine has.
Wolverine definitely has, and Rogue has spent a lot of time on the Uncanny Avengers, as has Havoc, and Beast obviously had his big stint in the 70s and 80s.
Right,
but yeah, I think those are the only major X-Men who've been on the Avengers.
Well, speaking of Rogue, Bob.
Yeah, man. So we get to see Rogue go hard at Bastion, and it's great. And we also get to see Nightcrawler go, both in the beginning and in the jump scene at the end, where, spoilers, Nightcrawler is in ancient Egypt. We really get to see Rogue and Nightcrawler go full out on their powers. It's pretty awesome.
This is why Nightcrawler needed to be on the team all along, Bob. He should have been a mainstay from the get-go. They needed a teleporter. They needed someone in kicks like that. And Rogue has turned out to be one of the best characters of this season, and people just need to shut up about the voice actress. If I see one more comment about how she doesn't sound the same, she aged, shut up. You wouldn't sound the same either 30 years later.
No, and I would generally prefer they stick to the original voice actors and actresses.
And she's had an incredible arc this season. I mean, we're talking, it's been great.
Well, and that's the other thing is I haven't seen as much criticism of the voice actress, although I believe it. But I have seen people be real critical of the writing of Rogue and Gambit, and it's like, man, I'm the #1 Rogue and Gambit fan. I adore Rogue and Gambit.
Right.
This season has been amazing. If you're a Rogue and Gambit fan, what are you complaining about?
If you can't take the melodrama, then you don't need to be watching X-Men.
Yeah.
When they're not going bang bang pow pow against bad guys, there's drama going on and tension between the members. That's how they do it.
Yeah.
That's how they make it interesting.
Rogue and Gambit is probably, it's not just that they're an X-Men couple, they're probably the most melodramatic of the X-Men couple. Now, I like that in the past, 5-7 years or so, we've settled into Rogue and Gambit as happily married couple, and I like them as a happily married couple. I like how much Gambit's mothers-in-law hate him. I love the Rogue and Gambit marriage, but clearly we're not there in the cartoon, and that's fine.
For those of you who don't know, too, Destiny and Mystique, correct? Those are her.
And especially Destiny just hates Gambit. Oh, man. Let's see. So, Matt, did you buy... we said we see Rogue and Nightcrawler go hard at Bastion, but we also see Jubilee go hard. Did you buy it?
I mean, slay me with the 4th of July was the comment that Bastion made. Yep. And he's kind of right. I was expecting her to go full on, okay, her powers are going to be super duper. Something new is going to happen. We're going to see a slight evolution. We didn't see anything. It was a letdown. She did break her glasses. I mean,
she did melt Bastion's face there.
Fireworks are hot. Yeah, we get that. But come on.
I mean, I don't hate Jubilee, man, but she's definitely my least favorite of the X-Men 92 crew. So. What can you do? What can you do? Another character who got a really nice spotlight was, it wasn't a physical spotlight as much, but we got to see Beast fly a Sentinel. Like, a Sentinel lands, and then, the chest opens up, and there's Beast flying, and that's awesome.
That was from earlier in the season, too, as well. I remember they figured out they could do that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was, like, maybe even the first episode.
It was, so it's just a callback.
I gotta say, Bastion's been fine as a villain, but I haven't had super strong feelings about him. I think he's been a serviceable seasoned villain. But man, my man has some great lines this episode when he's telling the X-Men, quote, "I massacre you freaks and you're recruiting me." That's such a good line. That is the tradition of the X-Men, right? Rogue was a villain, Wolverine was a villain, Magneto and Apocalypse are villains in McFace turns.
But when they blow up your whole mutant nation, come on, that guy needs to go. He doesn't need to be on your team.
There's a famous moment in the Dark Phoenix saga where Phoenix has Cyclops take off his visor, and she's powerful enough to hold his optic blast in and to bang him without thinking about it very much.
I want to see your eyes, boy.
We get a more sentimental version of that where she lets Cable look into his dad's eyes while she holds back the optic blast, and I thought that was a very cool moment.
Okay, Bob, I thought this was cheesy too at first, but I found something out.
What's that?
I read that in the original run, the 92 run, Corsair tells Cyclops that he has his mother's eyes.
Oh, that's sweet.
So you see the connection here?
I will say, even though it's a really sweet scene, Matt, Cyclops is still a deadbeat dad.
Oh yeah, he totally is, Bob. I mean, come on. And what was awesome is the action figure of Madeline Pryor's Goblin Queen comes with a little bitty Nathaniel. And guess who's holding Nathaniel in my little setup downstairs? Not Cyclops. Bishop. Bishop's got a gun in one hand, and he's holding Nathaniel in the other.
We might have talked about this in the Goblin Queen episode, but you've seen that meme where it's Goblin Queen cradling adult Cable, then pointing angrily at Jean. Matt, should we go ahead to Forge's Days of Future Past board here at the end?
Yes, Bob. Let's get to the part where we talk about the speculation of what's to come, because, geez, they left us with some major Easter egg type stuff for what could come in Season 2. I hope it pays off, because I don't want to speculate for a whole year and then find out none of this stuff comes to fruition. But let's go ahead and talk about this board, Bob.
So, we have Bishop come in, talk to Forge, and then we see a board that's very much like the famous cover of the Days of Future Past issues. And Matt, who do we see on the board?
We see the regular team have been marked out. They're missing in action. But we also have Archangel marked out, which was surprising. We've got Jubilee and Sunspot, and Cable are considered AWOL. But the other characters, Bob, we got Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, who, of course, are conveniently off-world. That's what happens when you have very powerful beats that can probably fix a lot of things.
People are speculating that means they're part of the Avengers.
And then you've got Colossus, Dust, Magic, Iceman, Havoc, Exodus, Shadowcat, and Emma Frost, Bob, who don't have any marking, so they're still around.
I can see 4 possibilities here for assuming we're going to do a Season 2 where the X-Men are missing for a bit, although judging by how fast this show moves through plot, that might just be one episode. But the 4 possibilities are you could have Forge and or Bishop lead an X-Factor team, which would make sense given all the previous X-Factor cameos this season, given that Forge has been the leader of X-Factor before. Or you could have Forge lead an X-Force team, which is currently what's announced as the new comic for From the Ashes. The X-Force book is going to be Forge leading X-Force, which hasn't happened before. Or you could do a more replacement X-Men team where you just go with iconic X-Men who haven't been part of the regular cast. And so based on the board, the logical choices here would be like Colossus, Magic, Dust, and Shadowcat.
And that would be a fun team, too. Jeez, that's some very interesting characters.
But then the 4th possibility that somebody raised in one of the shitposting groups that I actually like a lot, I don't think it's going to happen, but it's the one I want to happen, would be you have Jubilee and Sunspot around still, and then you have Emma Frost. And so it would be very, very 90s if instead of doing a 90s X-Factor team or a 90s X-Force team, you did a 90s Generation X team.
Yeah.
You get people Chamber, Husk, Marrow, Maggot, Mondo, Penance, Skin, and Sync. I think that would be awesome. Although, I guess I guess Marrow and Banshee are dead, so that a little bit crimps your Generation X style.
Right. Yeah, you're missing some pretty prominent characters from that team. So let me tell you this, Bob. I do like the idea of doing these individual teams because it's so 90s. I mean, because remember when we were reading, I mean, you had all these different, you had Excalibur, X Factor, X Force. They were all their own little thing, their own piece of this. You never really got that in the 92 series other than with X Factor. I personally think they're just going to have a form of X Factor because the government is going to want to run the mutant team. They're going to be the ones in charge of it. They're going to want to have that kind of say, and I think that Valerie Cooper is going to be a big part of that.
And traditionally, she is a big part of X Factor.
So I'm thinking they're going to go the X Factor route, and they've shown so many different clips from the Cold Comfort episode. They keep going back to that. They keep showing us Polaris. They keep showing us clips of Havoc, Forge. I really do think that's the direction they're going to go. Although I would love for them to do highlight episodes of several different teams, and at the end of those episodes do like they did with the first season, or was it the first or the second season of X-Men, where you had all those Savage Land things with Xavier and Magneto.
Like, that'd be fun.
Yeah, but at the end of the episode, it's whatever's going on in the time travel stuff. Like whatever's going on in the past in ancient Egypt, or whatever's going on in the far, far, far future. Get a little 5 minutes of that in there, and then go to the next episode. Follow a team that's replaced the X-Men. That would be kind of cool. I don't know if it would hit with everybody as well as this has, but I think that would be really neat to see. And it would get more mutants on our screen. That's the cool part too.
Yeah, very, very much want that. Very much want that. Well, as Bishop says, Matt, I think it's a good summary point for this discussion angle. Luckily, this ain't our first time at the X-Men are dead rodeo.
Oh yeah, they're definitely coming back, guys. Don't worry about that. They'll solve this. They'll figure it out, and it'll be better than ever.
All right, Matt. So who's stuck in ancient Egypt?
We've got Rogue, Nightcrawler, Beast, Xavier, and Magneto all stuck in ancient Egypt with Apocalypse.
Yeah. Or as I described him in the notes, that young Egyptian thought. Apocalypse looking good. I texted a friend, a gay friend, and I was just, when you see Apocalypse, you're gonna go the.
He's pretty cool looking.
All right, and then so we see Cyclops, Jean, and basically Kid Cable in the far future, right? And so we're sort of getting our wish for Teen Cable or Kid Cable that we've mentioned before.
Our local comic book shop growing up, Bob, you remember we used to get extra comics in the bag that he was trying to get rid of?
Yeah.
One of the issues of this run with Cyclops, Jean, and Kid Cable, I think it was called
The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix.
I had one issue of that. The art was terrible. Maybe I'd like it better as an adult, but man, back then this is the worst I've ever seen.
I gotta say, as excited as I am to have Gates McFadden voice Mother Ascani, I hate the Ascani stuff in the comics. I really hate it. I hate the Cable's future. I don't like reading stuff involving it. So I have faith that X-Men 97 is going to do a good version of this, and also that they're going to do a fast version of it. But I will say, even though it's cool to do the Leo point and be like, I recognize that, it's like, yeah, ooh man, definitely one of my least favorite angles of X-Men mythos, Some
of the stuff they have pulled out, stuff from the Morrison run, stuff from Fractions run, all that good stuff, and then this, I'm like, this is the weird territory that I just never really liked.
If you're gonna do the 90s, it is a part of the 90s.
It's totally there, you're right. And it hasn't already been represented in the previous in the 92 run.
I will say the artist for the Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix is Gene Ha, who is an artist I absolutely adore. He has a great run with Alan Moore on a cop comic called Top 10 that's really worth reading. But I will say, based on the Wikipedia page, I'm looking at the first issue cover of The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, and it's a bad cover, my brother. So this is maybe not Gene Ha's good work, but rest assured he does have great work. That's not this one.
He made Gene look very, very, very old. And he made Kid Cable didn't look like a kid. It just looked like Cable.
Yeah. Hey, but Jean looks old, but she's ripped as hell.
Yeah. It's awkward. It was never my favorite.
Yeah. No, me neither, man. Me neither. Thoughts on where Morph, Storm, and Wolverine are at?
I mean, I'm going to throw a dart at the board and say they ended up in the future, but I'm also really going towards this theory that we're going to talk about in a minute. So you may want to hold off on that for a second.
Well, I guess one other theory to bring up then that I don't think is the theory you're talking about is if you're saying that it's the time travel is triggered by the cube in Cable's arm and they're going around like Cable's personal timeline, might you have them, because you know how big like nostalgia time travel is. If you think about the Infinity War or Endgame movie where they have to time travel back to the first Avengers movie,
Right.
maybe they'll time travel back to Genosha in season 1.
Oh, that's a good idea. They're in the timeline, but in the original X-Men time, the X-Men 92 timeline.
Yeah.
They're going all the way back to 92.
Well, Matt, so what's our big mid-credit scene?
Well, Bob, we get this mid-credit scene of Apocalypse in modern times on Genosha, and he sees the card, the Queen of Hearts, which we know was the card that Gambit threw into the fire when him and Rogue had their little spat. And so this is implying to me that Gambit's going to become a horseman and be death.
Yeah, because Apocalypse says something to the effect of "so many children, so much death."
Yeah, and is he going to be resurrecting those people there, Bob? Or is he going to use
Yeah.
people that are already alive?
As I was thinking about it, Matt, obviously, it's been a theory that Gambit will come back as Apocalypse's Horseman of Death for a long time, and that did happen in the early aughts comics. I think right before when you started reading with the Civil War and the House of M stuff.
Yes.
But I then was thinking about it more, and I haven't seen people talk about this, but you could assume that he might get all of his horsemen from the dead. And we do have a lot of major dead characters, right, on Genosha.
Plenty of really great choices, honestly. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got his little... He can pick a ton of fantastic mutants that could handle these positions.
And it could be people we haven't seen, too, but just to go with who we've seen, I mean, in alphabetical order, number 1, Bo DeMeo.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to mark that one off. That one's not going to happen. But that would be a fun little idea if
But
it was
maybe... But, Matt, if they do bring Bo DeMeo back to actually showrun again for season 2 and 3, could we say that Apocalypse resurrected him from Genosha?
I'll gladly say that that's what happened. I think that's great.
All right, so besides Bo DeMeo, we've got Callisto, Dazzler, Madeline, Marrow, Moira, Sebastian, and I forgot, I talk about him down below, but Banshee as well.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, think about Callisto. She's awesome, hand-to-hand, combat fighter, close-range fighter. She looks like rugged as a horseman. You got Dazzler, who, I don't know. I mean, she could be fun.
Dark Dazzler, like Horseman Dazzler, that could be really fun.
They could do something creative with that. Then you got Madeline Pryor. I mean, that you have that level of telekinesis, telepathy. Yeah. I mean, come on, that's a win-win there. Marrow, I'm a little iffy on that one. She's cool, but I just don't see that happening. Myra's not happening, Bob. I'm telling you that. I'm not going to shoot that idea down.
Even with her even if they reveal her as the mutant of the alternate lives powers.
They're not gonna do that. If they did that, I mean, I would be amazed if they brought that plot up. But that would mean they're doing a whole different, he's crazy. Sebastian Shaw, I kind of like that, honestly.
It's one of the ones I least want to see, but I feel like it's most likely, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Banshee, that's a shoo-in, yes. Banshee would be a fantastic horseman. Flying in with that scream, looking like death, that'd be awesome.
And so Banshee was there was a different incarnation of the Horseman. I think it was in Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers, where you have the 4 Horsemen of Death, where they're just all for death, and Banshee was one of them. But I could also see him maybe being Famine, because, Gambit's got to be death.
Yeah,
Some other possibilities. So in the comics, Hulk, Juggernaut, and Deathbird have all either been War or they've been candidates to be the Horseman War. So those would be some other candidates. And then Sunfire has been Famine, the Horseman Famine before, and Polaris has been the Horseman Pestilence. So those are all possibilities.
Yeah, totally possibilities. I don't think they're happening, but those are possibilities. Now, Archangel, he was presumed missing on that page. He's been a horseman.
Although he's famously death too, though. So because I feel like it's almost a shoo-in that Gambit's going to be death. So will they bring back Archangel? I mean, I believe they'd bring back Archangel for that plot, but do I believe they'd make him a horseman again? I'm not so sure.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of good options here, but I'm really leaning towards another theory, Bob.
Yeah, one other theory that I'm skeptical of, Matt, but you want to lay it out?
Yeah, so we don't know where More Storm and Wolverine are. are they the Horsemen that are missing? You add Gambit to the mix, and bam, you've got your 4 right there. Wolverine with his bone claws. I mean, didn't he get his adamantium back from Apocalypse? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, that's how he gets the adamantium back. He's also, I think, if I'm remembering right, he's also Death though. So you just got a lot of competition for that Death spot, you know.
And then Storm was actually a member of the Horsemen in the film.
Yeah. Who were the 4 horsemen in that film?
Oh,
I totally
God,
forgot. It looks like it's Storm, Angel, Psylocke, and Magneto.
Oh, duh, Angel. I forgot about Angel. Yeah, because they find him in that warehouse and they rip his wings off. Yeah. So
Man, I totally forgot about that.
yeah. So there's a possibility Storm will be one. Now Morph. I mean Morph. Their power. I mean, come on. Like there's so much they can do with them. Come on.
Although I would feel, I mean, there's not necessarily a reason not to do it, but given that Morph has already been turned evil by Sinister, it is kind of going back to the well.
I think they would give them that costume that they had in Age of Apocalypse, though.
Oh, that could make sense.
That wacky looking one.
That would be
cool.
Make sense. Yeah. Nice. Well, a lot of great possibilities for season 2, Matt. I'm really hoping for Generation X. I'm really hoping for Banshee coming back as a Horseman of Apocalypse. Any final thoughts before we give our characters of the week?
Not really, Bob, but do make sure that you check out our coverage of our whole season roundup, our coverage of that, because we really are going to go more in depth with some of the stuff that we've talked about. And Bob and I are probably going to have a couple of arguments, because as you know, we like to rank episodes, and I'm in some disagreement this time with Bob. Usually I'm not, but I'm in a little bit of disagreement with him.
Tension, baby. Controversy creates cash. All right, Matt. Who was your character of the week before we sign off?
Character of the week, Bob, go into Morph.
Very good choice. Very good choice. I'll give it to Rogue. As we'll say in the recap, this is the 3rd time this season I've given it to Rogue. So, yeah, man, I love that girl. Her going ham on Bastion, it was something else.
It was amazing.
Well, join us on Patreon. We're going to keep exploring X-Men 92 and Young Justice. We're in the depths of Season 3 of Young Justice and Season 4 of X-Men 92. Catch us on the free feed. I think we're probably going to switch to My Adventures with Superman, assuming we actually have stuff to say about My Adventures with Superman. And we'll probably keep some comics reviews coming at you, too. So this has been Uncanny Treks does X-Men 97 Season 1. Join us for the Season 1 recap.
Thanks for listening, guys.